Hello everybody, my name's Jordan and this is mine and Sophie's project for English 402 that involved the restoration of the vacuum pumps at the 222S Analytical Laboratory on the Hanford nuclear site. Before we get into the problem and proposed solution, let's talk a little bit about the background at the labs. Currently the Labs is operated by Washington River Protection Solutions, otherwise known as WRPS, which is a federal contractor to the Department of Energy. The facilities is approximately 70,000 square feet, although that doesn't include the facilities surrounding the labs, which house groups like engineering and radiological control. The labs were built in the early 50s, and the overall mission for the Hanford nuclear site changed in 1989 when the site went from a nuclear weapons development site to the overall mission being to clean up the nuclear waste that was left behind from creating those nuclear weapons. Regardless of the change in the site's overall mission, the 222S Laboratories has always remained an analytical laboratory. The labs houses 11 hot cells, which are used to shield the scientists during their analytical work from any stray radiation that the samples they're analyzing give off. So the issue at hand was the vacuum system at the 222S labs, and the overall issue with the vacuum system was that two of the pumps currently are not in very good condition to continue allowing the facility to run. They don't pull enough vacuum to keep the facility in an operating standing, while there are two others that are the minimal number required to keep the facility running that are in a primary use standing. With the pumps being in a compromised position like they are, the facility is at risk of an outage, which is unacceptable to the Hanford nuclear site, as when the facility is no longer running because of an outage, work out on the nuclear site cannot be performed. So the plan to restore these pumps and to repair them first involved submitting a proposal to the engineering group, namely the design authority of the vacuum system, whose name is Frank. So me and Sophie wrote a letter to Frank explaining the situation, which he was already aware of and he was pretty much already on board with before we wrote the letter. But regardless, we wrote him the letter and he agreed that it was an issue. The rest of engineering was pretty much on board as well. So the next task at hand, after getting everybody involved with this project, was to draft the engineering packages and documents that were needed to perform the field work. Following this the next step was to order any necessary parts to repair the pumps from the manufacturer. And finally, after everything was set and ready to go, the field work could begin and the pumps could be repaired. So getting a little more in depth with our first task, the proposal was submitted to Frank, and the rest of engineering, including Frank, was all on board with getting these pumps back into a better standing. After that, it was a matter of talking with the management group at the 222S labs to make sure that they were okay with this work being performed, which after much debate back and forth between engineering and management, we came to an agreement of a time and a deadline that this work could be started and completed. Of course, the discussion with management was in a much more straightforward manner than it was with engineering, because they don't need all the details of exactly what work was going to be performed. They just needed to know when it was supposed to be started and when it was going to be ending, and any impacts that it was going to have on the facility's ability to analyze samples that were being brought in. So, working with management, we also came up with a general budget for each pump and also the overall project as a whole. And of course, like I said before, the timeline for the work that was going to be performed. So, task 2, as part of the solution to this issue with the pumps, was to prepare all of the work packages that would allow field workers to restore and repair each of the pumps. Prior to any of the field work that was going to be happening to repair these pumps was another engineering work package to separate control power between pairs of pumps. So currently each pump is paired with another. So 1 and 2 are controlled by one switch, one on-off switch, and then pumps numbers 3 and 4 are controlled by another switch. And while that's great for day-to-day operations when you can just flip one switch and both required pumps come on at the same time, it wasn't convenient for maintenance work because you have to turn the pump off, but if you only want to do work on a single pump, the other pump that's connected to that same circuit also has to come off. So you have to have 2 pumps turned off at one time, even if you only want to do work on one pump. When this work was being performed to separate the control power, the field workers, or one field worker, received an electrical shock from a connector that was improperly wired, and essentially it boiled down to a safety recall on that particular connector. So that was an issue that set the timeline for this overall project back, because that had to be fixed before any further work could be done on the pumps. And task 3, as part of this solution, we had to know exactly what parts needed to be ordered for each of the pumps. Almost all of the pumps had to have scraper rings, rod packing, and gaskets ordered for them, which none of those terms might mean a whole lot to anybody watching this video, but ideally you should just know that all of those parts that were ordered are necessary for the proper running of each pump. So without those parts, the pumps would likely fail in the near future. So those had to get ordered for each pump. And the only way that we knew to order those was to call in subject matter experts, namely the manufacturer of the pumps, and they gave us a little guidance on which parts they thought might be going bad inside each pump that was causing them to not work like they did when we originally purchased them for the 222S labs. So after getting all the parts ordered and getting a plan together for how much time it was going to take for the maintenance crew to fix each pump, it was estimated that each pump was going to cost somewhere on the order of $30,000 to fix. So for 4 pumps, it was going to be around $120,000 to fix the facility's vacuum system. And of course, with the COVID-19 issue going around right now, the Hanford site was no exception to the list of companies or organizations that had to shut down because of this epidemic. So everybody started working from home on March 17th, while the planned work for the repair of these pumps was planned for the 26th. So obviously, with everybody being home, the work couldn't be done. And currently, the workers on the Hanford site are still working from home. So we are eagerly waiting for the field work to be started and completed on these pumps. With that being said, the work is theorized to be performed later this year or sometime into next year, although many of the engineering group members think that that's probably wishful thinking. So thank you for listening, and if you have any questions, please let me or Sophie know. Thanks.